Maybe they're independent and they can make their own decisions, like Serbia.
Maybe
right?
they don't want in on your fight.
Maybe like Serbia, which made a natural gas deal, and and now Russia is building a military base in Serbia. They've made their point. They know what they want. They know where their allies are. They remember NATO bombing. They remember their country being destroyed. And many African nations have a long memory of U.S. colonialism, U.S. military intervention. And they rightly blame Western sanctions as well as war for raising food prices and exacerbating shortages in Uganda. Just specifically Uganda, we're using it as an example here. She was asked by reporters to clarify this position. I like this because I pulled up the transcript of her speech. And the question was, are you planning to say what you just told me, the reporter, to the leaders of those countries and those representatives who you are meeting with? And Ambassador Thomas Greenfield says, I'm going to be, she basically says it's going to be a listening tour. She says, I'm going to be listening to them. This for me is a listening tour. It's how, I want to hear how they want to deal with addressing the issues related to food insecurity and finding solutions. So I'm not going about some blame game. What I am about is finding a way forward so that we can address the food insecurity needs that people are feeling every single day. People are starving. People are suffering. How can I and the United States government use our positions to help Africa? How can we address these needs? As you know, Administrator Power was in the region last week discussing food insecurity with African leaders in the Horn of Africa. Secretary Blinken will be on the continent next week, and all of this is a lead up to what we'll be doing during a high-level week in New York in September and the African Leaders Summit in December, and the president will be hosting it. Oh, I can't wait for that in December, to see the president of the United States hosting the Africa Summit so we can tell them more what they can do with themselves.
Sure. Also,
is Toto going to be there?
Then I would go.
I mean, okay, you're here to listen, but also you have an agenda of what you don't want them to do. Also, like, I don't know, you're traveling on U.S. taxpayer dollars. Maybe you should just listen on the phone then instead of doing all this threatening.
Yeah, but also to listen to food insecurity, like how is it for you guys to be so food insecure in a region that we've raped for so many years? Like what is that like? Like we literally come into your country and steal your resources. What is that like? Can you tell me?
Yeah. Oh, Ethiopia, you're hurting. Sorry.
I just, like you're on a date for the first time. Like, I'm really interested in you, Africa. Can you just died in your eyes?
I just hope they use the like baby voice, like, oh, like, oh no, tell me about your food insecurities. Like,
right.
Come on, this is like pandering. This like pisses me off.
Yeah.
Like this.
Go ahead.
It's so pandering. It just pisses me off.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want to know about your food insecurity and we want to find solutions for you.
But we're also going to tell you what you can't do to solve it.
Here's an idea for finding solutions. How about we stop stealing your resources? How about we stop placing undue debt burdens on your countries, right? So that you can never claw your way out of poverty because of the International Monetary Fund and the amount of debt that you take on at the behest of the Western colonial powers and imperial powers that rape your countryside on a regular basis. How about that? Yeah, but we'll invite you to Washington for a little Africa Summit so we can tell you more about how.
Looking at the situation in Africa, right, you will realize that Africa has a lot of problems. I believe that we are only going to get our own issue resolved if we start looking for solutions to our problems. More too often, we have problems in Africa, but we do not tackle these problems by ourselves, right? We let outsiders come in and tell us how we can deal with these problems. Now, it's not always a bad thing if someone wants to lend a helping hand. It's not always a bad thing. But I think you who has this problem must shoulder the heavy load, because no one is ever going to address your problems. No one is ever going to look into your issues like you would. So, talking about food insecurity in Africa or the food crisis in Africa, it's quite funny, right, that Africa, with all its fertile soil still has food crisis, that Africa is unable to feed her population, even though African soil is so fertile, right? It's funny. And some of these things you will wonder, like, what is really, really going on? Because remember, Africa used to be the food basket of the world. What happened? What went wrong? Many countries in Africa used to grow food that they used to feed their population. What really happened? Why did Africa abandon food production? Why? Why? When you ask yourself all these questions, then you come to realize that there is something really, really wrong in Africa. That our leaders have let themselves be manipulated by the West. Because I think it was an article online that said that the West does not want Africa to grow its own food. According to the West, Africa should always import food from the West, or Africa should grow just barely a minimum, something that cannot even feed their population, and most of it should be exported from outside. For example, the West will come to Africa and buy raw mineral, let's say gold or timber. And in return, the West will sell food to Africa. That is the whole transaction. Because the West does not want Africa to make their own food. For example, if Africa had to sell raw minerals to the West and not buy anything in return, it would be something like an unbalanced trade. Then you ask yourself, if this is really true, if this is really what the West put in place, how come our own leaders accepted it? Why would they do that? Isn't this to their destruction? Doesn't this negatively affect them and the African people? Why would they allow it? So I have always said that there are certain policies that the West is pushing in Africa. And you will realize that more too often, our leaders in Africa will just accept it. They would listen to the West. They would take whatever the West tells them without pushing back. And then we'll find ourselves in very, very difficult situation. Isn't it a shame that Africa is out there begging for food from Ukraine and Russia? Isn't it a shame that Africa cannot grow enough food to feed her people? Isn't that a terrible, terrible shame? So there's a lot of problems going on, and we all must tackle this problem. Like Ibrahim Traore said in Russia, Africa should be able to grow enough food to feed her people and sell some to the outside world. That it is quite a shock and a disgrace to find out that Africa cannot feed her own population, and Africa is out there begging for food. And if there is one thing I have always mentioned, is that he who begs for food has no respect. He who begs for food deserves no respect. He who begs for food do not demand for respect. But you guys out there, help me understand why Africa, with all its fertile soil, yet still cannot grow enough food to feed her population. Why is Africa so affected by hunger and starvation, even though we have enough land that we could grow crops? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below, because like always, we love hearing what you have to say. And also, do not forget to like this video, share this video, follow our Facebook page, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel, because little bit of good will, like the one you're doing just now, help us a lot, and we shall forever be grateful to you. So thank you very much for doing just that. And like always, see you in the next one.